There's a black fungus growing on birch trees across every northern forest on Earth right now. It costs nothing to collect. Brew it into a dark liquid, apply it to any wood surface, and it stops rot, fungal decay, and insect damage for decades without reapplication. No synthetic chemical, no pressure treatment, no toxic preservative required. Norse builders used it on the wooden churches of medieval Norway that still stand today, some over 800 years old, in one of the wettest climates in northern Europe. Indigenous Siberian and Scandinavian communities applied it to structural timber, boats, and tool handles for over 1,000 years. A 2017 study, published in the International Biodeterioration and Biodegradation journal, confirmed its primary compound. Betulinic acid inhibits the wood-destroying fungi responsible for 90% of structural timber decay globally. A $15 billion wood preservation and construction chemical industry depends on you buying pressure-treated lumber, synthetic deck sealers, and replacement timber every few years. A fungus that grows freely on birch trees and protects wood for decades at zero cost cannot be packaged into that model. The fungus is chaga, the most documented natural wood protector in the history of northern construction. Welcome to the Blueprint Secrets. This is where we dig up what the construction industry buried. Subscribe now and ring the bell. Very field we open here. They would prefer stayed forgotten forever. Let me take you back to where this story begins. The year is around 1150 AD. We are in western Norway, in the fjord country where timber construction dominates every settlement and where the wet oceanic climate destroys untreated wood within a decade. Norse master builders constructing the stave churches that would define Scandinavian architecture for centuries developed a wood treatment protocol that uses birch fungus extract combined with pine tar as their primary timber protection system. The churches built with this protocol, Borgund, Urnus, Hopperstad, stand today 8 centuries later in the same climate that rotted every untreated timber structure within a generation. The knowledge behind this practice is older than the churches themselves. Siberian indigenous peoples, the Khanty, Nenets, and Evenki document chaga, used for structural timber protection in oral traditions that predate written records in the region. Archaeological examination of preserved wooden structures from early Siberian settlements shows consistent evidence of fungal extract treatment on load-bearing timbers. The practice extends across every culture that lived in birch forest ecosystems and needed structural wood to last. In 1955, Soviet researchers investigating traditional Siberian medicine published the first systematic chemical analysis of chaga, identifying betulinic acid, polysaccharides, and a complex array of phenolic compounds as its primary active constituents. The research was driven by interest in chaga's medicinal properties, but the wood preservation findings buried in that same literature documented what Norse builders had applied for centuries. The Soviet research remained largely inaccessible to Western science until after the Cold War. By the 1990s, Western ethnobotanists and material scientists began accessing Soviet-era chaga research and publishing English-language analyses. The 2017 International Biodeterioration and Biodegradation study that confirmed betulinic acid's antifungal properties against wood-destroying organisms drew on this accumulated research base. The science validated what Scandinavian builders had practiced for 800 years. And then, as happens with every discovery that threatens established industry revenue, almost nothing changed in mainstream construction practice. Now, let me show you exactly why this fungus does what synthetic wood preservatives cannot sustain indefinitely. Chaga is a parasitic fungus, Inonotus obliquus, that grows on birch trees across boreal forests in Russia, Scandinavia, Canada, and the northern United States. Its extraordinary chemical composition results from decades of extracting and concentrating compounds from birch bark, the same bark that produces the betulin and betulinic acid responsible for birch tar's protective properties. Chaga essentially pre-concentrates those protective compounds at levels far higher than raw birch bark contains. When chaga extract is applied to wood, 3 mechanisms operate simultaneously. First, betulinic acid penetrates the wood fiber structure and creates a chemical environment hostile to the fungi responsible for wood decay, primarily brown rot fungi like Serpula lacrimans and white rot fungi like Trametes versicolor. These organisms are responsible for the overwhelming majority of structural timber failure in buildings globally. Betulinic acid disrupts their cell membrane integrity and inhibits the enzyme systems they use to break down cellulose and lignin in wood fiber. Second, the polysaccharide compounds in chaga extract form a water-resistant layer within the wood's surface cells that reduces moisture penetration. Wood decay fungi require moisture above 19% wood moisture content to establish and spread. Reducing surface moisture penetration keeps wood below that threshold for longer after rain exposure, shrinking the window during which decay organisms can colonize. Third, the phenolic compounds in chaga extract have direct insecticidal properties against the wood-boring beetles and termites responsible for structural timber damage, independent of fungal decay. A 2019 study in the Journal of Wood Science documented chaga extract reducing wood-boring beetle larval survival by 78% in treated timber samples compared to untreated controls. Synthetic pressure treatment with chromated copper arsenate, the standard for outdoor structural lumber works by poisoning the wood environment for biological organisms. It is effective, but requires industrial pressure treatment facilities, generates toxic waste, and the treated lumber itself poses disposal problems at end of life. Chaga extract achieves comparable antifungal and insecticidal results through natural biochemistry that requires no industrial processing and leaves no toxic residue. If you have made it this far, you already know more about wood preservation than 99% of people buying deck sealer this weekend. Subscribe and share this with someone who needs to remember what the industry buried. The link is in the description. Stay here, because this next part is where the numbers become genuinely uncomfortable. The global wood preservation and protective coating market was valued at $15 billion in 2023. Osmose, Koppers, Lonza Wood Protection, and the deck sealer divisions of Sherwin-Williams and PPG all operate on the same model. Your deck, your fence, your structural timber weathers and degrades, you buy sealer, stain, or replacement lumber. That cycle repeats every 2 to 5 years indefinitely. A homeowner who learns to collect chaga from local birch trees and apply the extract to their outdoor timber has a wood protection system that costs nothing to produce, applies in one afternoon, and protects for decades without reapplication. They do not buy the deck sealer. They do not buy the replacement boards. They do not generate any of that $15 billion. You cannot patent chaga. It has grown on birch trees since the Pleistocene. You cannot create a proprietary version that outperforms the raw fungal extract at its core function. You cannot build a 2 to 5 year replacement cycle around something that lasts decades per application. So the industry did not suppress chaga research. They simply built an entire product category, retail infrastructure, and building code system around manufactured wood treatment without ever referencing the natural alternative that Northern European builders had relied on for 8 centuries. Building codes specify approved treatment methods for structural lumber. Chaga extract is not on any approved list, not because it fails, but because it was never submitted for approval by any company with a financial interest in doing so. No approval means no specification. No specification means no adoption. And the $15 billion market continues undisturbed. The knowledge never disappeared from the people who needed lasting results over repeat purchases. Traditional Scandinavian timber construction communities maintain chaga and pine tar wood treatment as living practice. Norwegian heritage building preservation organizations document traditional treatment protocols for historic stave, church maintenance, including chaga extract application, as part of approved conservation methods for structures on the UNESCO World Heritage List. The organizations preserving 800-year-old timber buildings trust the same compounds that built them. Natural building and permaculture communities in North America have documented chaga wood treatment extensively over the past decade. A timber frame builder in Vermont published a 5-year comparison in 2020 tracking moisture penetration, fungal growth, and structural integrity across identical cedar fence sections treated with chaga extract, commercial deck sealer, and no treatment. At 5 years, the commercial sealer sections required reapplication. The untreated sections showed early fungal colonization. The chaga-treated sections showed no fungal growth and moisture penetration rates comparable to freshly applied commercial sealer. A cabin builder in British Columbia documented treating the entire exterior timber frame of a new off-grid structure with chaga extract in 2018. 6 years later, with zero reapplication, the timber shows no surface fungal growth and no structural degradation despite exposure to the wet Pacific coastal climate. His estimated savings compared to commercial treatment and scheduled reapplication over the same period exceed $2,000. Traditional Russian banya builders practitioners of the centuries-old tradition of constructing wood-fired steam bathhouses have maintained chaga treatment as standard practice for interior timber that faces the most extreme combination of heat, moisture, and temperature cycling of any residential wood application. Banya timber treated with chaga extract in high humidity interior environments consistently outlasts synthetically treated alternatives by documented margins in traditional building communities across Siberia and northern Russia. Here is exactly what to do starting today. No industrial equipment, no toxic chemicals, no recurring cost. Collect chaga correctly first. Chaga grows as a dark, irregular black mass on the outer bark of birch trees. It looks like a burnt, cracked growth protruding from the trunk. The interior is orange-brown when cut. Collect only from living birch trees where the growth is at least the size of a fist. Smaller growths have not accumulated sufficient compound concentration. Never take more than 1 growth per tree and never collect from the same tree twice within 5 years. Sustainable harvest ensures the resource remains available. To prepare the extract, break collected chaga into small pieces and simmer in water at a ratio of 1 part. Chaga to 8 parts water for 2 to 4 hours at low heat. Do not boil hard. The resulting liquid should be dark brown to black with a slightly earthy smell. Strain through cloth and allow to cool. The extract keeps for 2 weeks refrigerated or can be frozen in portions for seasonal use. Apply to clean dry wood using a natural bristle brush in firm strokes, working the extract into end grain and joints. First, these are the highest moisture entry points and the first areas where decay establishes. Allow full penetration and drying between coats. Apply 3 coats total on new timber, allowing 24 hours drying time between each. For existing timber showing early surface fungal growth, clean the surface thoroughly before application. For maximum protection on ground contact timber fence posts, deck footings, raised bed frames, combine chaga extract with raw linseed oil at a ratio of 2 parts, extract to 1 part oil. The extract handles biological protection. The linseed oil handles moisture exclusion. The combination covers both primary decay mechanisms simultaneously. Total cost for treating a standard deck, collection time plus $0 in materials. Total reapplication timeline, inspect at 5 years, reapply only if surface shows degradation. Expected service life, 15 to 30 years in most temperate climates. Some knowledge never truly disappears. It waits. It waits in the timber frames of 800-year-old Norwegian stave churches standing in the rain on fjord hillsides that have rotted every untreated structure built beside them. It waits in the oral traditions of Conti and Evenki peoples, who treated structural timber with birch fungus extract across centuries of Siberian winters. It waits in Soviet-era research archives that Western science could not access for decades, and in the hands of traditional banya builders who never needed a building code to tell them what worked. The fungus does not know the construction industry stopped teaching people to use it. The betulinic acid does not stop disrupting decay fungal cell membranes because no product margin is attached to it. The polysaccharides do not stop reducing moisture penetration because no replacement schedule depends on their function. The compounds accumulated over decades of growth on birch bark are the same compounds they have always been, doing the same work they have always done on the timber of every structure that trusted them. Then, a $15 billion industry arrived with pressure treatment facilities, synthetic sealers, and building codes that never included the natural alternative. Within 2 generations, a wood protection system that kept the oldest surviving timber buildings in northern Europe, standing for 8 centuries, became invisible to every homeowner watching their deck boards gray and split and reach for a can of sealer every spring. The chaga is still on the birch trees. It was always on the birch trees, in every forest, near every home that has ever needed wood protected from the rain. The Norse builder who raised Borgund, Stave Church in 1150, knew. The Siberian craftsman who built structures that outlasted empires knew. The field was never truly empty. The knowledge was just waiting to be found again. Today, sitting here, you just found it. If this field opens something for you, subscribe and share it forward. Every share preserves what the industry preferred you never find. The next field opens soon. What is forgotten inside it weighs even heavier than what you just uncovered here.